Welcome to the Bird Podcast. I'm Shobha Narayan. Our guest today is distinguished academic author and ultra-marathoner, Dr. Bernd Heinrich. He is the professor emeritus in the biology department at the University of Vermont, and he's the author of a number of books about nature writing and biology. Dr. Heinrich has made major contributions to the study of insect physiology and behavior, as well as bird behavior. Today, he will talk to us about the various birds he has encountered and why he enjoys them. Dr. Heinrich, welcome, and thank you for talking to us.
Well, thank you. Nice to be on.
Okay, so you've written a number of books and I've been reading all of them. So if you don't mind, let's dive into the one about ravens.
Okay.
Can ravens think and how can you know, which was one of your books.
Yeah, well, it's one of, ravens are thought to be very intelligent and it's been a question and it's very difficult to test because you don't know what they might have learned to do without even thinking about it. But can they see a problem and act on it without trial and error? So, I did a simple thing is I first of all had a bar and I had a string about a meter or so long, and I put some food at the end that they would like. And these were tame ravens, so that, I'd hand reared them, and I know they had never before seen a string. They had never before encountered any like this. And the question is, can they see through the problem in order to get the reward? So to get the reward, they'd have to pull up the string. But it's long, so they can't just give it one yank. So then they have to, put it onto the perch, and then they have to avoid it sliding back down. So they have to put certain pressure on it. They have to stand on it and hold it, and then reach down again and do it in several times. So they have to know that the food is connected to that string, and it turns out crows couldn't do it, and the young birds couldn't do it. They had no idea. They would try to fly at it. They see the food and they fly and they grab it and it falls out of their mouth, and then they give up. But once in a while, one came and he would do the step, and get it. And and just to know just to find out that they really know it's connected. For example, I would have two side by side, and one would be a rock and one would be a food. Now, do they really know they have to pull on that one with the food, or is just pulling on any string? And so on. So one test after another with the string pulling, and it showed that some of them, without prior practice, could go through the whole process to get that food. So I think that shows that they can think. They have, they know what the solution is before trying it.
So your 2009 book, The Mind of the Raven, Investigations and Adventures with Wolf Birds, describes all this. And one of the things you also talk about is about ravens sharing food. So are they altruistic, these birds?
Well, I don't think so. They are fairly aggressive. However, it looks like they might be, because usually when one finds, there would be many coming soon thereafter, as though they're calling them in. And they actually, it looks like they actually are recruiting them. But what they're doing is they're just being quite selfish, actually, because they're cooperating to get to overpower usually the adults who are guarding that, and they're very aggressive. And the juveniles hang out together and they roost together, and and thereby they get to feed by bringing reinforcements. So they are sharing, but it's a selfish sharing.
Yeah, so it's a strategy, not so much as a temperament.
Yeah, it's
Why did, sorry,
it, yeah, it's a strategy of getting the food
yeah.
that they share.
Why did you study tree swallows, Dr. Heinrich, and what did you find out?
Oh, tree swallows they nest in tree holes, and it seemed like they should be able to use any kind of soft material, like chickadees, titmice, they used fur, and others use any kind of feathers. But you never see a white feather in the chickadee nest here, or many of the other birds, they never see any white feathers. But the swallows, they would end up having white feathers, and they're right here where I am in this clearing here. And I never see a white feather, very, very seldom. And I said, you know, they must be going through a lot of work to get those feathers. So, so I started watching them to see what benefits they could possibly get from getting white feathers and where they're getting them from. And anyway, so one of the ideas is that possibly the white feathers, they have white eggs, they might camouflage the eggs so that a predator wouldn't know that there were eggs in there. And another hypothesis might be that it's a signal to competitors who will be using, who would like to use that same nest box, that same hollow, because there are not very many around. So in other words, housing is rather limited, and that they would, once they find one, they want to mark it. And so others will know that it's being occupied. And that's what I think is this question, is the answer to it.
It's a territorial thing. It's a, like you say, it's a marker. Yeah.
Territorial marker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A flag. Yeah.
You've written several books about crows and ravens. One of the questions that you pose is if ravens have a culture, basically why they live with humans in some cases, and why they are very shy, as in New England.
Yeah. Well, here in New England, they had in former times been shot and killed when it was more open and they had a lot of sheep pastures, and there would be, you know, afterbirths when the sheep were born and young lambs, and whenever there was a dead animal, there'd be a raven there. So the association was that they were killing them, and so they were the enemy, and they were always shot, and they're still extremely shy. But when I went up in the Arctic, where that never happened, they're extremely tame. They were right in villages and sitting on the rooftops, and, you know, right in back of, you know, if you drop some food, they come right there, and they're really tame. So they have a different culture. And if they see one down, then the others will come. They say, oh, it's okay, it's safe. The same as here. If one comes down, if they're afraid, and then the others will immediately come, because basically they've tested it. And so now if one flies away, then everybody will go immediately. And that is remembered for a very long time, and it gets passed on. So that's kind of a culture that of what is the enemy and who's friend through the culture experience.
You just mentioned you went up to the Arctic. I'm just curious, what took you there? What did you study there?
Well, actually, I first went there. I was doing work on bees, bumblebees. They're furry, fuzzy, big bees. And some of them are way up in the Arctic, and I was wondering if they could still regulate their body temperature, and if they had special mechanisms to be able to stand the cold and to have their colonies there. So incidentally, you know, I really liked it up there, and took other trips and saw the ravens. So one thing kind of leads to another. Actually, I was working with bumblebees for a very long time before I got to ravens. That was kind of the last big research was with the ravens, but mostly before I was with insects.
I know, yeah, I know that work too. So where are you now, Dr. Heinrich? Which part of the world are you located at now?
Well, it's New England. It's northeastern United States, right close to the border of Canada. And it's mostly forested here. It's a northern forest. I was for 15 years in California in the city in Los Angeles, but I'd grown up here mostly, more or less, and wanted to come back, and I bought this land in the woods, and so that's where I am right now.
In Maine, you said earlier, yeah.
Maine, yes.
But you were born in Germany, and your father. So tell us a little bit about your father. He's he's a wasp man, isn't he? And a bird man.
Yeah, he's mostly known as an ichneumon wasp guy. So he collected these wasps all his life, but actually he was interested in biology in general, and he was especially interested in birds. So he was working for different museums, and he would go on different expeditions. He went to Burma and Sulawesi and Iran and Africa, collecting birds mostly, and that brought money. That's why he got paid by the museums, the Berlin Museum in Germany and the New York Museum in New York, the Natural History Museum, and other museums. So on the side, that was be his thing was to collect the wasp. And during the war, when they had to leave, actually, the Germany that he knew early on, as a kid, he was born in Germany, but the country became Poland because it was taken away from Germany, and so always a little bit in not really known whether we're from Germany or Poland, but so it is now, it's Poland. And anyway, so when he had to leave, he buried his whole collection in the forest, because he figured it would be destroyed. And like 40 years after, he finally told the Polish authorities where it is, and they went there and dug it up, and it's in perfect condition now in Poland, so in Warsaw. But in the meantime, he made other collections over here, especially in America and in Africa too, where I joined him for 1 year, and we're collecting birds and wasps.
And his book, The Snoring Bird, he wrote a book.
The Vogelschnarch, yeah, the snoring bird, yeah. That was when he and his wife and her sister, they spent like 2 years in Sulawesi, Celebes, and that was near the beginning of the Second World War, and he had been sort of commissioned to get this special bird, which they thought was extinct, and that was Arabidopsis platani. That was a Latin name for what was called commonly the snoring bird. When after he found it, that was the voice it had, and so near the end of the expedition, he I think he was there like 2 years, and he still hadn't got it, and he still wanted to get it, and money ran out. So that just then they found a bird that had never been discovered before, a new species, a nightjar, and so then they got the funding to stay a little bit longer, and then they got the snoring bird. So it's kind of diabolic that they got the snoring bird because of the nightjar, and so the nightjar was called the diabolical nightjar, or also the Heinrich's nightjar.
Oh, it's named after
Because,
your father. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. You studied woodpeckers too, Dr. Heinrich. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I didn't too much study them, but I had kind of fun with them because right here, here on this wall upstairs, there's a hole through the wood where woodpecker had started making a hole, and so I immediately fixed it so that I'd be able to see the nest when, or what was going on, so I could have a little curtain there, and so I got to see from the egg laying through the fledging, so that was a lot of fun. And then I picked up another one. It's called a sapsucker, a young one that was out of the nest, but it was so weak that it couldn't fly, and I brought it home and fed it meat, and in a few days it was strong, and it got so it would come when it was called, and I got so I even got it to take meat out of my mouth, so I got to know it really well. So I wouldn't. It was fun because that's what I do. The biology is because it's fun. So here I wasn't learning that much, except that it was fun, and so I class it along with playing with a raven. Sometimes you learn something and sometimes you don't, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, in your email to me, you said it was not top-notch science, but it was a lot of fun. I remember that. Yeah. And you had quite an experience with the great horned owl. In fact, I think you wrote a book about it as well.
Yeah, one man's owl. That
Yes.
was right here too. That's one of the reasons why I come back here, because I like this area. Yeah, it had, there was a snowstorm and something happened, and I think the limbs broke or something, and I picked it up and brought it in, and it was just a fuzzy little thing, and called it Bubo. Bubo is a genus, and it was totally free. I never had it in a cage, really. It was just totally free here, and it got so it would follow me around, and it seemed to know if I was going hunting. If I took my .22 out to shoot a squirrel, it would immediately come with me, and it got a little bit aggressive too. It would chase. This was its territory, and it would tolerate me, but other people it would attack, and that's a big owl. So I learned quite a bit about the behavior of owls by having that here for a couple of years. And then it just became wild after a while.
You said you learned a lot about the behavior of owls. Any one or two anecdotes or about behavior of the owls?
Well, one thing I learned is the relationship between crows and owls. Here, whenever crows find an owl, they raise a big ruckus and they call each other in, and they're just attacking it all over the place. But I had two crows at the same time, and I learned that they got along after a while, because after it caught one, and then I was there to release it, the crows were so alert to it that they would always be able to get out of the way, and the owl was too clumsy to be able to catch it unless they were not watching. So they would always watch it, and so after a while they just ignored each other because one couldn't catch it and the other one could always see what was coming and get out of the way.
Huh. Which is your favorite bird aesthetically?
Aesthetically, I think probably aesthetically is one that makes a lot of music, and it's a snipe. They call it wood snipe, woodcock. It flies up into the air and does a dance very, very high, and twitters, makes all kinds of sounds in the evening in April when they first come back. So they're the first birds that come back and singing up there in the sky. So aesthetically, I really appreciate them here, and so I would call them the most aesthetically pleasing.
Then the other things that I picked up is you had some fun discoveries with golden crown kinglets as well.
Oh, yeah, golden crown kinglets, they are in body size, they're bigger than most hummingbirds. I don't know if you have honey eaters, I suppose, in India. So they're tiny birds, but they're very fuzzy with fluffy feathers. So they look a little bit bigger, but if you take the feathers off, they're just tiny little things. And I was amazed how they can survive here in the winter at very low temperatures and, very, very cold, how they can keep warm. And always wondered what they did, and one time found that they stay together as a group all day long, so that at the very moment when it gets dark, and they have to forage until the whole day because the days are short and they have to get a lot of food in. So they don't have that much time. They have to work till the very last, and then boom, in a matter of a few seconds, they all clump together and keep warm by clustering.
My last couple of questions have nothing to do with birds, but you are a marathon runner and an ultra marathon runner, and you have set records for it. You've written a book called Why We Run, A Natural History. So I just wanted I was curious about, and I think you started running quite late, isn't it? Rather, you started setting records quite late.
Yeah, I didn't. I ran. I early on liked to run, but I didn't set records until I suddenly decided, I was going to set this record. I had run a marathon, and I'd done very well, but it wasn't exceptional. But I thought I could run further. I could be better at longer distance because I was speeding up at the end. And that's where I won, because I could run it at the end. So I said, well, I should really try something really long and see. And I did. And I said, I ran 100 kilometers. I had a year, one summer to train, and I did it. And I said, I'm never going to run another one. I'm going to run that race. I'm going to set the American record. And I did. And I did. I ran the distance, and I made sure, I had some of the physiology down, but maybe not too much. But one thing I did know is I had to have fuel. And so I drank lots of sweet cranberry juice. And I don't know if that helped, but it didn't harm.
And you ran 100 kilometers in 6 hours and 38 minutes and 21 seconds, according to Wikipedia.
Okay, well, I believe it. Yeah, but I find it hard to believe that I did it.
Yeah. Last question.
I ran the same race.
Yes.
I was going to say I ran the same race, that same course, only the 50 kilometer, only half the distance, but twice the age, this last fall.
You're 82 now.
Yeah.
Last question, Dr. Heinrich, is I always ask our guests, what are some of your favorite bird species?
Favorite bird species? Oh, they're so different. It's like comparing apples to oranges. I don't think I can really do it. I can't do it. I like them all. They're all so different. They all got something special. And I definitely, you couldn't say what was the favorite one.
Okay, then let me put it a different way. What would you tell a young 15-year-old naturalist or a teenager inclined towards bird watching? What are some pieces of advice or hints that you can give them?
Okay, I would give advice, something where they could watch the nest, something that's fairly tame. uh, And, like putting up a bird box, and, starlings. I like starlings, something that you can get close and personal with. I wouldn't want your favorite bird to be something where you have to have binocs, powerful binoculars, and go special places. I mean, what is right at home, easily accessed, I would recommend. They're all so fascinating, and anything that you can get close to, and that's why I like to have had pet crows and jays and pigeons, anything so that you can get close and get to know them.
Yeah, that actually, so bring the bird to you is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dr. Heinrich, thank you so much for spending time with us. Thanks for talking to the Bird Podcast.
Well, thank you very much. It's been nice being with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.